This is not Madden with the salary cap turned off. Like, there's a salary cap, and also you can't just go you can't take a free agent that's a 62 and go edit the settings and be like, oh, look, there's an 85 free agent out there. Like, that's not how it works. Clock Ben Standig will join us. Of course, Ben is... he's a contributor here to the station because he filled in for Chris Russell last week. And you're just like, hey, Standing's back on a mic. Love that. But the Commanders beat reporter for The Athletic is his day job. He hosts the Last Man Standing podcast as well. And he's got the latest on whether or not there is even anything to report on the Terry McLaurin front in terms of the contract negotiations and the extension and him not being in practice for some of this week and what to look forward to next week when it comes to OTAs and all that stuff as well. So when we get there, we'll have a bunch of running backs on the field. Running backs are fun to watch in non-padded practices because they score a touchdown in every touch, which is a nice trick. When nobody's allowed to tackle you, you just keep on running. Then you get to yell at your teammates, be like, nobody touched me. And you're like, yeah, those are the rules. Brian Robinson is, of course, going to enter the season as RB1. You have Austin Eckler back. You have Jeremy McNichols. You have guys like Michael Wiley, who were around last year, still floating. But then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, the 7th-round pick, is also in the mix there. And some people are pretty excited about that. Some people think that's a terrible room that desperately needs an upgrade. Kevin Sheehan talked about it on his show a couple days ago. Here was his take, and then we can respond and pick up the conversation from there.
Washington clearly in the NFC, the worst running back room of the contenders, the perceived contenders. That's not even debatable. Is it important, though, to have elite level or high level running backs to go on to win the Super Bowl? I don't know. Not necessarily. But it certainly seems to be a more important position today than it was a few years ago. So is it good enough if you view this team to be a Super Bowl contender? And if not, what should they do about it? I have said for several weeks running, I would definitely look into Chubb and I would look into Dobbins. 100% would look into both of them to check their health, to see what it would take to bring them into the running back room. It can't be a big deal, right? Like a 1 year, $5-6 million, some of it guaranteed, some of it incentive, that's what it's going to be. So I can't imagine somebody's getting 1 year, $10 million, 1 year, even $8 million fully guaranteed of those two guys. But I would look into both of them. And Dobbins coming off an MCL sprain and, the best year of his career might be the more realistic one to look at.
There's a couple of things that Kevin talks about that I think are worth double-clicking on. First things first. Do you need an elite running back to win a championship? Well, last year the Eagles, they had Saquon Barkley. Sean Barkley, he was a big old factor in their championship run. Anthony, the previous two Super Bowls were won by the Kansas City Chiefs. Who was the running back?
Kareem Hunt, and the most recent one, I guess, and then Isaiah Pacheco and the other one.
Yeah, Pacheco, 7th-round pick, not elite. Kareem Hunt bounced around, not elite at this stage of his career. Los Angeles Rams won the Super Bowl in February of 2022. Who was their running back?
It wasn't Kyron Williams.
I think it was before Kyron Williams.
It wasn't Todd Gurley. He was hurt.
Yeah, Gurley.
Oh, it was Sony Michel, wasn't it?
Yeah, what's he doing now?
That's a great question, Craig.
I think I've made my point. Previous to that, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they had Leonard Fournette. He was important.
He was toting that rock.
He was important to them. And he was one of the better backs in the league for a period of time. 2020, it was the Chiefs again. The Patriots, like James White, was very important to them.
He's a playoff killer,
right? But like he's not an elite running back down the list of teams that did not have elite running backs. So, do you need an elite running back? No, unless you're making the argument that the Eagles have set off this new path, and that you look at some of the Super Bowl losers. San Francisco had Christian McCaffrey. That helped them get there. If you look at the Lions, the number 1 seed in the NFC last year, they've got Jahmyr Gibbs, who is a premier playmaker at the position. And so clearly having a good running back isn't a bad thing. But I think this is actually a pretty interesting conversation to have on the heels of our last conversation about how to build a champion in the NBA, where I kind of think there's one way to do it. You have an elite player, you surround him with complementary skill sets. You probably need actually multiple elite players, but definitely need to surround your number one unquestioned guy with guys that complement his skill set perfectly, fill out the holes and the gaps. You have all the roles assigned, and then you probably need someone to play out over their skis. Like if you're the Denver Nuggets, you need Jamal Murray to play like a top 10 player like he did for that playoff run where you win a championship. And then all of a sudden you realize a couple years later, maybe Jamal Murray's more of a top 25 player than a top 10 player, but he damn sure played like a top 10 player when they won a championship. You know, Chris Middleton, Drew Holiday were incredible in that run for the Bucks. On down the list, you need guys to play at an elevated level for short spurts, and there's an element of luck in that, but it starts with get the guy, surround him with the right other guys. There's no right way to do it in the NFL. The easiest way, in some respects, is get the elite quarterback, surround him with the right pieces. Hopefully he's still on the tail end of his rookie contract, when you're really good and you can overpay for some of those pieces and you're in a good spot. And then when that quarterback is getting paid, can you find a couple of other gems in the draft? Like the only thing that has to happen guaranteed is your stars have to play like stars, and you need some stars that are on rookie contracts. So the guys that are getting paid got to play well. And then the guys that are not eligible to get paid yet also have to play well. But what positions they're at is less important as long as you have competent quarterback play. And that becomes a very different discussion, right? The best way to do it is to have Mahomes or Brady or whoever, but you can win a Super Bowl with Nick Foles. You can win a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. You can win a Super Bowl with, Jalen Hurts. They put Jalen Hurts in the right positions. He's more of a win-with guy than a win-'cause-of guy, but he straddles that line, and they make it so that they win because of Jalen Hurts. And so I think the question is, if you're the Commanders, like, is premier running back something that is worth it to you? And my answer would be no. 301-230-0980 is the phone number to give us yours, 301-230-0980. And the short version, Anthony, of why is because you have Jaden Daniels. Because your running game is always going to be better because of his existence. You have an elite passing game by the nature of his existence. I would rather spend my money and my resources complimenting him and lifting him up and knowing that any NFL quality running back is going to be good here without me having to spend on it, and then also throw resources at defense. So this idea that you need to go get a veteran, or especially, God forbid, you need to trade for one, like I am all the way out on that for this year and basically for the rest of Jaden Daniels' prime.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of the question, and I'm just looking at Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, I think those three are in an upper echelon of running backs. Guys you can hand the ball off. They can make something out of nothing, because we've seen it happen before. You know, when Christian McCaffrey was with the Panthers, when Barkley was with the Giants, we've seen them, make something out of nothing. And now that they're behind, tremendous offensive lines and have this great running attack, I think it just increases their value. I would just say if we can just have a running attack similar to like the Browns, I feel like when Nick Chubb went down, they plugged in all these different running backs, Jerome Ford and I forgot his first name, something Johnson. They were still effective in their running game because they had an effective running attack. So I think that's where the argument should really go to, whether it's should the Commanders, focus more on, some type of, rushing scheme that takes a little bit of the load off of Jaden Daniels and, how to optimize it. So I think that's more so where it should be as opposed to like having a premier running back.
I will say, as you mentioned some of the guys that you just mentioned that are the elite of the elite, an interesting counter argument does come to play. We'll talk about that and take your calls at 301-230-0980 next. So we're talking about the running back situation and whether or not the Commanders need to upgrade their running back room. And I think ultimately my answer is no, Anthony, both based off the current available options and based off of my general thoughts of how important running back is to this team. But as we were going through this team part of it, and you mentioned the guys who, like, of course, would be super valuable to add because they're awesome football players, which is, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, the three best backs in the league over the last 5 years. It's not lost on me that Saquon plays with a mobile quarterback in Jalen, and Derrick Henry just had a resurgent season playing next to Lamar Jackson. And it's like, what happens if you give and this is, to me, always a question, right? Is sometimes coaches fail superstars by simply asking them to be superstars. And it's like, well, what would happen if you put a superstar in ideal circumstances, right? It's Steph Curry with the Warriors, right? Steph Curry probably would have figured out how to become a great Hall of Fame NBA basketball player no matter what. You put him in their offense, and he's one of the 10 best players probably ever. That take just blew some brains, but that's fine. I think Steph Curry is a top 10 player, and I have no problem fighting about it another day. But he's the best version of himself, right? And we talk about this with players all the time. If you play out X player's career 20 times, are you seeing the 18th worst version of it? Are you seeing the 10th best version of it? Are you seeing the best? You play Steph Curry's career out. I don't know how it could possibly play out much better than this outside of Klay Thompson not blowing his Achilles and tearing his ACL and Kevin Durant not blowing his Achilles in 2019. Outside of that stuff, outside of his control, I don't know how much better Steph's career can go. Because even when he's gotten hurt, like the ankle stuff kind of made him change the way he trained and launched him into this. And then he gets hurt again with the thumb in 2021. And the work he does that offseason, along with like even the COVID break, he just bulks up and gets stronger. And that launches them into the 2022 championship and this back 4 holes of his career where he's still hitting birdies. And you're like, well, damn. So what happens if you put a star running back in ideal circumstances? And I would say playing with Cliff in the way he designs the run game next to Jaden Daniels behind a much better offensive line and will, eventually, hopefully a great offensive line. That would be cool. But the question for me is, what's the opportunity cost? And that's the harder part, right? And that's why, like, bringing in Dobbins or Chubb right now to bring it full circle, I'm really not that interested in. In 2025, is JK Dobbins that much better than Austin Eckler? Probably not. Age-wise, production-wise, coming off the MCL. Like, I don't know how much better J.K. Dobbins is than Brian Robinson or Austin Eckler. I don't think that Nick Chubb's going to be better than those guys. Not that they weren't in their primes. Dobbins was really, really good in Baltimore. And Chubb was unbelievable in Cleveland. But, like, his knee got shredded. The chances that he's going to be that as an older back post-injury are just not very high. And so if that's the case, and even if they're slightly better, aren't you better off just investing the time into the guys that you have, giving Ja'Cory Cross, not bumping him down to 6th on the depth chart by bringing in a couple of extra vets to compete? Oh, we want to compete. Yeah, but eventually there's only so many reps to go around. And that's why I'm just not that interested in, like, sure, kick the tires, call their agents, see how much it would cost, see what their health status is. If they were down to go do a workout, bring them in. Whatever. And if you think they can be way better than the guys you got, I trust Adam Peters enough that if he signs JK Dobbins, I think there's a reason. You also want to know how they are to do your due diligence, because if one of your guys gets hurt, you want to bring in someone you can trust. But right now, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me to bring in a guy that I don't think is going to be better than what you have. And that seems fairly straightforward to me.
Yeah, I think signing one of those guys off the street signifies to the room that that guy is the starter kind of thing. And I don't think that's sort of kind of the message you want to send. Also, I think Brian Robinson, I think people have just been so quick to, write him off.
I agree.
And I don't fully understand why. Yeah, he had the bad game against the Eagles where he had all the fumbles. But outside of that, like when he's been healthy, he's been pretty productive. And also, part of some of his lack of production was due to, you know, our offensive line not being able to get some of that push against that stout defensive front of the Eagles. I'm not going to put that all on Brian Robinson. So, again, I think the tandem we had last year with B-Rob and Eckler, I think definitely is good enough. And I don't think we necessarily need an upgrade right away kind of thing.
No, I mean, you do in the long term because all these guys are on one-year deals, so you're going to have to address it eventually. I'm not saying it can't get better. It's just this is not Madden with the salary cap turned off. Like, there's a salary cap, and also you can't just go you can't take a free agent that's a 62 and go edit the settings and be like, oh, look, there's an 85 free agent out there. Like, that's not how it works. You're at the mercy of what's actually available to you from an option standpoint, and I just don't think the options are that much better than what you got. And at that point, what's the point?
Hey, this is DA, and you're listening to The Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.